My sister's husband vanished overnight, leaving behind debts, lies, and my parents in ruins. They turned to me for rescue. But what I said when my mother got on her knees changed everything. I never thought I'd be standing at a crossroads where my own dignity clashed with the survival of my marriage. But that's exactly what happened. My stepdaughter, she accused me of shattering her parents' marriage. She demanded I confess to an affair that never even existed. And in the end? She got what she wanted, but at a cost neither of us could take back. I'm 38 now, married to my wife Zara, who's 41. We've been together for 4 years. And then there's her daughter, Ileliana, 20 years old. She's the storm that's been brewing in our lives for nearly a decade. I first met her when she was 12, right after Zara and I started dating. But let me rewind a little further, because context matters. Zara and I once worked at the same marketing firm. Different departments, barely any interaction. Just polite nods across a meeting table or small talk at office parties. Back then, I was seeing someone else, and Zara seemed happily married, her desk covered with smiling family photos. I eventually left that job for a startup and didn't think about her again. 2 years later, fate threw us back together at a birthday party for a mutual friend. And I'll never forget how different she looked that night, tired, drained, like life had been siphoning away her energy. That's when she told me she was in the middle of a divorce. Her husband had walked out 6 months earlier, and the papers were almost finalized. We ended up talking the entire evening. At some point, I asked her if she wanted to grab coffee sometime. That's how it all began. Now, here's where the cracks started showing. Zara's ex, Tom, was bitter. He swore she was having an affair, though he never had a name. According to her, he was always paranoid, jealous when she worked late, suspicious if she went out with friends. She told me their marriage had been over long before they signed the papers. Still, that lie, that poisonous seed, was planted. And it spread. When Zara and I first got serious, Ileliana didn't seem to mind me. I drove her to soccer practice, helped with homework when she asked, but I never tried to play dad. She was polite but kept her distance. Honestly, I thought that was normal. But when she turned 15, the shift was undeniable. She started making these barbed comments about men who leave their wives for younger women. I mean, Zara is only 3 years older than me, so what was she really implying? Then came the pointed questions. When exactly did you two meet? What date was that? She'd do the math on her fingers and mutter, interesting timing. That's when Zara finally told me the truth. Tom had been filling Ileliana's head with lies. He told her Zara's marriage ended because of an affair with me. Since she knew her mom and I had worked together years before, she convinced herself it had to be true. Zara tried to explain we'd barely spoken at that job, that we reconnected only years later. But Ileliana didn't believe a word. And the resentment only grew. At family dinners, she'd toss out digs about homewreckers. She rolled her eyes anytime Zara and I showed affection. Eventually, she started spending more time with her dad. When she was at our house, she treated me like a trespasser. Zara tried talking to Tom, begged him to stop poisoning her. But Tom shrugged it off, saying he was just being honest and that his daughter had a right to know why her family had fallen apart. By the time she started college, I was invisible. She'd come home for the holidays and answer me with one-word responses, or not at all. Zara would cry after she left, wondering if she'd failed as a mother. I even suggested showing Ileliana our old emails as proof we'd barely interacted back then. But Zara said it would just look desperate. Fast forward to this past summer. Ileliana came home after her sophomore year, and Zara was thrilled, planning movie nights, family dinners, everything. But the house? It turned into a minefield. Ileliana locked herself in her room, grunted replies, left dirty dishes in the sink for Zara to clean. The eye rolls, the sighs, the drama, it was endless. And then came the explosion. I was working from home one afternoon, sitting in the living room on a video call, when Ileliana strolled downstairs and turned the TV on full blast. Some trashy reality show screamed through the speakers while she scrolled her phone, sprawled across the couch like she owned the place. I waited, hoping she'd realize I was working. She didn't. When my call ended, I asked politely, "Hey, can you turn it down? I've got another meeting in an hour." She looked at me like I'd just asked for her firstborn child. Then she cranked the volume even louder. That's when she snapped. She shot up and started yelling that I had no right to boss her around in her mother's house. Then the accusations poured out, each one like a blade. Homewrecker. Pathetic man. Gold digger. She claimed I manipulated Zara, turned her against her own daughter, and that everyone knew I'd married her for money. The cruelest part? She said her father had been right about me all along. That I was disgusting. That she wished Zara had never met me. I stood there, frozen, as every word landed like a punch. The gold digger part burned especially deep. I actually earn more than Zara. I'd even turned down a higher paying job once because I wanted to keep our home life balanced. But in her eyes, I was just a parasite. When she finally ran out of steam, I took a breath and told her, "You can't stay here if you're going to treat me this way. Come back when you can be respectful." She laughed in my face. "This is my real home, not yours." Then she stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. An hour later, Zara walked in to find me staring blankly at the couch, my chest still heavy from the fight. I told her what happened, and she immediately called her daughter. Straight to voicemail. No reply to texts. No answer from friends. The next morning, Tom called Zara, livid. Apparently, Ileliana had shown up at his place in tears, claiming I'd kicked her out for watching TV. She told him I'd been verbally abusive, even insulting her father. Tom roared that he always knew I was trouble and threatened to call the cops if I ever laid a hand on his daughter. Then he delivered the final blow. Eleliana would be living with him from now on. Zara could visit her daughter whenever, but I was not welcome. The house has felt hollow ever since. Zara spent days leaving voicemails, begging for her daughter to call her back. And me? I've replayed that afternoon again and again. Maybe I should have just put on headphones. Maybe I should have swallowed my pride and said nothing. But deep down, I know this was inevitable. Years of being painted as the villain, it was bound to erupt. Now Zara barely speaks about it, but I can see the strain etched into her face. She's torn in half, between her daughter and her husband. And I can't help but wonder. Did I do the right thing standing my ground? Or did I just destroy the fragile connection Zara still had with her child? Because now, our house feels emptier than ever. And I'm left questioning everything, my marriage, my choices, and whether Eleliana will ever see me as anything but the enemy. I honestly wasn't planning on updating anyone. I figured the dust would settle eventually. But the last 3 weeks? They've been nothing short of hell. After Eleliana stormed out that day, our house turned into a mausoleum. Quiet, heavy, suffocating. Zara and I barely spoke. She wasn't angry with me exactly, but it was like she was mourning someone who wasn't dead. She'd sit in the living room, phone in hand, waiting for a call that never came. And when it didn't, she'd bury herself in work, staying later at the office just so she wouldn't have to come home to the silence. I tried to give her space, but walking into that house felt like tiptoeing across broken glass. Every conversation, no matter how small, always circled back to Eleliana. A memory. A story. A laugh she used to have as a child. Then, like clockwork, the smile would fade, and Zara would sink into that familiar guilt. It was eating her alive. And, truthfully, it was eating me too. Then came the phone call that blew everything wide open. One evening, Tom called Zara. His voice was sharp, demanding, like he'd been waiting for this moment. He said Zara had to choose, between me, her husband, and Eleliana, her daughter. No middle ground. He claimed Eleliana was refusing therapy, refusing mediation, refusing everything, because of me. According to him, she was having panic attacks, losing sleep, feeling unsafe in the very house she grew up in, all because I was there. And then he threw the dagger, if you love your daughter, you'll leave him. Zara's response was steady, but broken. She told him she wasn't leaving me. She wanted to fix things, but she wasn't going to abandon her marriage. Tom's answer? Not good enough. And he hung up. Just like that. I'll never forget Zara collapsing afterward. She cried for hours, whispering over and over, I never thought I'd have to choose between my daughter and my husband. The next day, Zara did something I'll never forget. She drove to Tom's apartment complex and sat in the parking lot, waiting for her daughter to come outside. When Eleliana finally did, Zara begged her to talk. But her daughter's words cut deeper than any knife. She said she had nothing to say unless I was gone. That my existence was a constant reminder of her father's pain. That she had tried to accept me, tried to pretend, but after I threw her out, she couldn't anymore. Then she looked her own mother in the eyes and said, if you choose him, you're not the mother I thought you were. When Zara came home that night, she was a ghost. She sat at the kitchen table, staring at nothing. When I reached for her hand, she pulled away and whispered that she needed space. That night, for the first time in our marriage, she slept in the guest room. And from there, everything unraveled. Zara started questioning everything. Our timeline. Our relationship. Even herself. She asked if maybe Tom had been right all along, if what we had started as some kind of emotional affair before the divorce was final. She stared at me with tears in her eyes and asked, did I lie to myself about us? I tried to ground her. I pulled out the emails, the photos, the proof that our relationship began after her marriage ended. But her response shattered me. Facts don't matter if Eleliana can't accept them. That was the moment I realized the truth. My wife, the woman I'd built 5 years of my life with, was considering leaving me because her daughter demanded it. She moved into the guest room permanently. She started seeing Eleliana at Tom's place, coming home with glowing reports about how much happier her daughter was when I wasn't part of the picture. Then she asked the question I dreaded, would I move out temporarily, just to give Eleliana space? I told her no. I wasn't abandoning my own home just because her adult daughter couldn't stand to share a roof with me. If Eleliana wanted a relationship with her mother, she needed to face reality. Zara was married, and I wasn't going anywhere. Zara's response? She told me I was being unreasonable. That I was putting her in an impossible position. The breaking point came 2 weeks ago. Zara looked me in the eye and said she was considering filing for separation. That she still loved me, but she couldn't sacrifice her daughter for her marriage. That night, I packed a bag and went to stay with my brother. Before I walked out, I told her, call me when you decide whether you want to be married or divorced. I won't live in limbo anymore. She cried, begged me not to leave, but she couldn't give me an answer. It's been 2 weeks now. Zara calls every few days, checking in, but she hasn't asked me to come home. Meanwhile, she and Eleliana are apparently rebuilding their relationship. Zara says her daughter is laughing again, joking, like the little girl she used to be. And me? I'm holed up in my brother's spare room, meeting with lawyers, trying to figure out what happens next. The lawyer says I've got a strong case for keeping the house, I've paid more into the mortgage. But Zara could argue it's Eleliana's childhood home, and that fight would get ugly fast. My brother thinks I should fight for her. That Zara's being manipulated by Tom and Eleliana, and one day she'll regret choosing them over me. But I'm not so sure anymore. Maybe this marriage was doomed from the start. Maybe you can't build a future when the child of one partner insists on painting you as the villain. Then yesterday, Zara texted me. Eleliana wants to talk. But here's the catch, she wants me to apologize. She wants me to admit I was wrong for throwing her out, and to confess that my relationship with Zara contributed to her parents' divorce. Even if it wasn't technically an affair. So now, I'm stuck. If I apologize, I'm validating years of lies. I'm giving Tom and Eleliana exactly what they've wanted, to paint me as the villain. But if I don't, if I stand my ground, I'll probably lose Zara forever. So here I am. Sitting in my brother's spare room, staring at my phone, wondering if my marriage is already over. Because maybe, just maybe, Zara already gave me her answer when she chose her daughter's version of events over mine. I want to start by saying thank you. After my last update, I read every single comment, some supportive, some harsh, but all of them forced me to think about what I was willing to live with, and what I wasn't. And after weeks of wrestling with it, I finally reached my breaking point. Zara arranged for me to meet with Eleliana. Neutral ground, a little coffee shop near her campus. The idea was simple, talk it out, maybe find common ground. I got there on time. Sat at a small table by the window, watching the rain streak down the glass, trying to steady my breathing. 20 minutes later, Eleliana strolled in. No apology. Just this air of entitlement. She ordered the priciest drink on the menu and slid into the seat across from me. Didn't even reach for her wallet. I paid, of course. We sat there in awkward silence until I finally asked, "So, what do you want to talk about?" Her answer? She said she might have been too harsh on me over the years. That maybe, just maybe, she was open to giving me another chance, but only if I admitted the role I played in her trauma. And then she hit me with it, regardless of the technical timeline, your relationship with my mom hurt me and my dad. You need to own that. I told her the truth. Again. That I was sorry she had been hurt by the divorce. That I never intended to cause her pain. That Zara and I barely knew each other back then, and only started dating after Tom had already walked out. But she just shook her head, like she was watching a liar spin a story. Then she pulled out her phone and shoved it across the table. Screenshots. Old social media posts, me liking group photos from work events, Zara leaving polite comments on my project updates, years before her divorce was finalized. She leaned back, arms crossed. Proof. Proof you were involved the whole time. Proof you lied. I stared at those posts, my stomach sinking. They were real, sure, but innocent. Harmless. Professional. But in her mind, they were the smoking gun. I tried explaining. That liking a coworker's post wasn't an affair. That a great presentation today comment didn't equal betrayal. But she was locked in. She said those interactions proved I'd been pursuing her mother. She claimed even if we hadn't physically cheated, it was still an emotional affair. And then she demanded I admit it. Out loud. Say you had feelings for my mom while she was married, she said. Say it, and maybe we can move forward. I sat there, heart pounding, and told her the only thing I could. I'm not going to confess to something that didn't happen. If you need to blame me for your parents' divorce, that's on you. But I won't rewrite history to make it easier. Her face twisted in anger. She called me selfish. Told me I cared more about being right than about Zara's happiness. Then she grabbed her drink, tossed it into the trash in one dramatic sweep, and stormed out of the coffee shop. An hour later, Zara called me. Her voice was sharp, tired. Why couldn't you just give her what she needed to heal? I drove back to my brother's apartment that night feeling like I was losing my mind. Zara actually believed that a fake confession, a lie, was a small price to pay for family peace. But to me, it would have been a life sentence. Eleliana would have dangled that so-called confession over my head forever. And things only got worse. Word spread. Eleliana showed those screenshots to Zara's family, her sister, her mother, even some friends. Suddenly I was branded the cheater, the liar, the man who'd destroyed a marriage. Zara's sister called and said she couldn't believe Zara was still with me. Her mother, who'd always been polite, started making snide comments about men who can't be trusted. And Zara? She started to pull away even further. She said that evidence had shaken her faith. She asked if maybe, subconsciously, we'd been drawn to each other before we admitted it. She was rewriting our story to match Eleliana's version, because that version made it easier to pick a side. Then came the final blow. Last month, Zara told me she wanted me to move out permanently so she could focus on Eleliana. She promised we could work on our marriage later, but right now? Her daughter came first. That was it for me. I looked her in the eye and said, if you want her more than you want me, then file for divorce. Stop stringing me along. She cried. She begged. She said she didn't want to lose me, but she couldn't lose Eleliana again. 2 weeks ago, I served her the divorce papers myself. The look on her face, shock, like she never thought I'd actually follow through. Like she believed I'd wait forever, half a man, living in her shadow. But I didn't. I couldn't. Now the divorce is moving forward. It's civil, at least on paper. Zara gets the house, Eleliana called it her childhood home, and Zara wanted to protect that. I keep most of my retirement accounts, the ones I worked so hard to build. We're splitting the savings. She's buying me out of the equity. And Eleliana? She celebrated. Told Zara she was proud of her for finally putting family first. She's been visiting more, smiling, laughing, inviting her mom back to campus. Zara got what she wanted, her daughter's love. As for me? I'm staying in my brother's spare room while I hunt for an apartment. It's strange being single again after 5 years of marriage. But you know what? I'm not as broken as I thought I'd be. Because more than anything, I feel relief. Relief that I don't have to defend myself anymore. Relief that I don't have to walk on eggshells, waiting for the next accusation. Relief that I finally put an end to the story where I was always cast as the villain. Zara still texts sometimes, asking how I'm doing. But I keep my replies short. There's nothing left to say. She made her choice. And now? We both have to live with it. The divorce was finalized last month. Just like that, 5 years of marriage ended with a signature on a stack of papers. Zara and I are officially over, and I've moved into my own place across town. Once we both stopped clinging to false hope, the proceedings went surprisingly smooth. Zara bought out my share of the equity in the house. I kept my retirement accounts and most of my belongings. We split the savings down the middle, cancelled every shared credit card. It took 3 months from start to finish. 3 months to dismantle a life we'd spent years trying to build. But here's the part one didn't expect. Twice during the process, Zara tried to reel me back in. The first time was 6 weeks after I filed. She called, sobbing, saying she'd made a mistake, choosing her daughter over our marriage. She said she realized how much she loved me and that she was tired of letting Eleliana dictate her life. She begged me to reconsider. Said it wasn't too late to stop the divorce. I listened, but my heart had already moved on. I told her I couldn't do it. Not anymore. Because what happens the next time Eleliana demands she choose? Do I just wait to be discarded again? Zara cried harder, but I stood firm. The second attempt came right before our court date. Zara actually showed up at my brother's apartment. She said she'd been talking to a counselor who made her realize how unhealthy the dynamic had become. She swore she was ready to set boundaries with her daughter, ready to prioritize me this time. She even asked if, after the divorce, we could start fresh. Date again, without the pressure of marriage. But I didn't believe her. I couldn't. I'd already seen where I ranked. And the truth is, once someone shows you your place in their priorities, you don't forget it. So on a Tuesday morning in a downtown courthouse, it ended. A judge glanced over our settlement agreement, signed the papers, and that was that. Less than 30 minutes, and my marriage was gone. Zara tried to hug me goodbye, but I just shook her hand. Take care, I said, and walked out. 2 weeks later, I ran into Eleliana at the grocery store. She was with friends, but she broke away when she spotted me in the produce aisle. That smug smile on her face told me everything before she even spoke. I heard the divorce is final, she said. Thanks for finally doing the right thing. She told me her mother was happier now, that their relationship was better than ever. She claimed Zara admitted she'd been miserable with me all along, that she regretted marrying me too soon. Then she twisted the knife. You must not have really loved her if you gave up so easily. I didn't take the bait. I just told her I hoped she and her mother would be happy, then went back to my cart. She looked disappointed that I didn't fight back. Funny how people like that need you to be the villain, even after they've already won. Zara's reached out a few times since then. She sent me a photo of a spring break trip with Eleliana, smiling on the beach. She texted me happy birthday, wished me well. I never replied. There's nothing left to say. My brother thinks one day, when Eleliana graduates, Zara will realize what she lost. That she'll come crawling back, lonely and regretful. But I don't think so. And even if she did, I wouldn't want her. Not anymore. Because here's the part no one saw coming. I've started dating again. Her name's Jessica. She works in accounting at my company. No kids, no ex-husband lurking in the background. Just a kind, steady woman who treats me like a person. Not a suspect. Not a villain. We're taking it slow, but for the first time in years, I feel light. Free. Zara got what she wanted, her daughter's approval. Eleliana got what she wanted, me gone for good. And me? I got what I needed, my integrity. The house Zara and I once shared is gone too, sold last month. I drove by out of curiosity. The new owners had painted it, planted flowers out front. It didn't even look like the same place. And maybe that's fitting. That house belonged to a life that doesn't exist anymore. Do I sometimes wonder what might have happened if I just swallowed my pride and apologized for something I didn't do? Sure. Maybe Zara and I would still be married. Maybe we'd still be pretending. But deep down, I know Eleliana would have found another reason to resent me. Some people need a scapegoat, and I was convenient. So no, I don't regret standing my ground. My marriage wasn't worth trading away my truth. The biggest lesson I learned? You can't force people to choose you. And you can't build a future with someone who consistently puts other people's feelings above your own. Zara wasn't a bad person. Eleliana wasn't evil. But neither of them wanted me as I was, they wanted me as their villain. And I'm done playing that role. Now, I've got my own apartment. A job I like. A woman who actually wants me in her life. I'm not waiting for the next fight, not waiting to be sacrificed on the altar of someone else's guilt. Sometimes the best thing you can do, the only thing you can do, is walk away. And that's my final update. If you take anything from my story, let it be this: love isn't enough when someone has already cast you as the villain in their script. You can't change their story. But you can choose to stop living in it. I need to get this off my chest, because what went down with my family has left me torn between anger and a strange sense of vindication. See, my family had a business. Not just any business, it was our legacy. My grandfather started it. My dad grew it. And me? I thought I was next in line. I was supposed to carry the torch. That was the plan. Or at least, that's what I thought. Turns out, my parents had other ideas. I'm 30 now. 6 years ago, right after finishing my MBA, I walked away from job offers at big multinational companies because I wanted to work side by side with my father. I wanted to honor what my grandfather built. I wanted to take it to the next level. And for a while, it was working. When I first joined, the company was outdated. We were still using paper logs, our client list was shrinking, profits had flatlined. I rolled up my sleeves. Countless nights studying operations, building relationships with employees, modernizing systems. I brought in new machinery, digitized everything, streamlined our processes. Within 3 years, profits jumped 40%. 40%. My dad was proud. He used to tell people I was born to run this business. But then, Ethan showed up. My sister Daphne married him 7 years ago. She never cared about the family business, she was happy being a stay-at-home mom. Ethan, though? He was one of those guys who reads half a book on entrepreneurship and suddenly thinks he's the next Steve Jobs. Communications degree, a string of sales jobs he never stuck with, always bragging about how he'd crush it if he just had the chance. And then 2 years ago, he started showing up at family dinners. Constantly. Steering every conversation toward business. First it was innocent questions, then suggestions. Most of them were ridiculous, things we'd already tried and failed. But Daphne would beam at him like he was a genius. And my mom? She's always favored Daphne. The perfect daughter, married young, gave her 3 grandkids, never argues. Me? I'm the single son who focused on his career. Which, in my mom's world, is practically a sin. Slowly, I noticed my parents changing. My mom would gush about how family-oriented Ethan was, how he'd do anything to provide for Daphne and the kids. She started whispering to my dad that maybe Ethan deserved a chance. My dad resisted at first. Ethan had no experience in manufacturing. But my mom and Daphne kept pushing. And eventually, he gave in. 8 months ago, my dad called a family meeting. I thought it was about the expansion plan I'd spent months preparing. Instead, he dropped the bomb. He said he wanted to train his successor, and he had chosen Ethan. His reason? Ethan is more stable, more experienced in life because he has a wife and kids. He's family-oriented. The business needs that kind of leader. I sat there stunned. I had the MBA. The years of sacrifice. The results. I was the one keeping the company afloat. And yet, all that mattered was that Ethan had 3 kids and a smug grin. When I pushed back, my mom called me selfish. Said family comes first. And then Daphne. God, that smile. She told me Ethan would graciously let me stay on. That I could even learn from him. Learn from him? A man who barely knew the difference between a supply chain and a chain restaurant? That night, I went home and stared at the ceiling until sunrise. By morning, my decision was clear. I wasn't going to waste my life playing second fiddle to a fraud. I walked into the office and handed in my resignation. My parents were stunned. My dad tried to calm me down, saying maybe Ethan and I could share responsibilities. But Ethan was already strutting around like he owned the place. There was no way I was going to work under him. When word got out that I was planning to start my own company, my parents exploded. They accused me of betrayal. My mom screamed that I was trying to hurt them by becoming their competition. I looked her dead in the eye and told her, "You betrayed me first." That was 8 months ago. Since then, I've poured everything into my own manufacturing unit. My savings, a small loan, every ounce of energy. And you know what? It's working. Clients who trusted me jumped ship and joined my new venture. Business is thriving. And every time my parents hear about my success through relatives, they suddenly want to talk. Funny how they only reach out when the money starts flowing again. But I ignore them. Because I know the truth. They don't regret what they did. They just regret how it turned out. Ethan? He ran the company straight into the ground. Bankrupted it in less than a year. Then he vanished, took what was left of my parents' money and disappeared. And now, suddenly, they're begging me for help. But me? I don't know if I even want to pick up the phone. Because here's the thing, for years, I was treated like the expendable son while Ethan was worshipped just for marrying their golden child. I built that business back up, and they tossed me aside like I was nothing. So maybe this sounds harsh, but I don't feel guilty. Sometimes you have to look out for yourself, because clearly, no one else will. A lot has happened since my last post, and honestly, watching it all unfold has been equal parts satisfying and heartbreaking. Remember how my parents said Ethan was more experienced in life, that he was better at handling responsibility? Well, those words are coming back to haunt them now in ways none of us could have imagined. I've been hearing the inside scoop from my cousin Mark, who's still a senior manager at the company. And let me tell you, it's been pure chaos. Within just 2 months of taking over, Ethan fired most of our seasoned management team. These were people who had been there 15, 20 years. People who knew the ins and outs of every single process. His reason? He said they were too stuck in their ways. But the truth? They were the only ones brave enough to call out his ridiculous ideas. So he replaced them. With who? His buddies from his old sales jobs. An ex-insurance salesman, a former real estate agent, people who couldn't tell a conveyor belt from a coffee machine. And then came his vision. Our company had built its reputation on high-quality industrial equipment, 3 generations of reliability and trust. But Ethan? He decided we should scrap all that and switch to consumer electronics. No market research. No analysis of capabilities. Not even a conversation with experts. Just a gut feeling that this was the next big thing. The kicker? He took out massive loans to fund it. Convinced my dad, who still holds the majority shares, to sign off on loan after loan, using company assets as collateral. From what Mark told me, Ethan's already borrowed close to the company's entire annual revenue. The factory floor? It's a disaster zone. The new managers don't know how to talk to workers, let alone maintain quality. 3 of our best supervisors quit last month. Ethan shows up late, calls endless meetings to preach about his vision, then throws tantrums when things inevitably fall apart. Always someone else's fault. Meanwhile, my sister Daphne is still living in Fantasyland. She floods social media with posts about her brilliant entrepreneur husband. Whenever old employees comment about the chaos, she deletes their posts and calls them jealous. But here's the part that really floored me. Last week, my mom sent a message through my aunt, asking if I could give Ethan some friendly advice. She said it would be good for the family if I helped him. I actually laughed when I heard that. I told my aunt to remind her, if they wanted my expertise, maybe they should have valued it before handing everything to an unqualified son-in-law. My mom didn't like that. She called me the next day, furious. Said I was letting my ego destroy family harmony. I asked her where this family harmony was when they dismissed all my years of sacrifice in favor of their golden daughter's husband. She hung up on me. Meanwhile, my company? Thriving. We've already captured 20% of the local market. Old suppliers prefer me because I actually keep my word and pay on time, unlike Ethan, who tries to renegotiate prices after deliveries. Just last week, 3 more clients jumped ship to my company after Ethan missed their deadlines. And then yesterday, Daphne showed up at my office. She didn't have that smug glow she used to carry. Instead, she looked almost desperate. She tried appealing to me, saying family should stick together, that I should help Ethan for the sake of our parents' legacy. I reminded her of what she'd told me before, that I could work under Ethan if I wanted. She fumbled, tried to explain it was different then because they thought Ethan would succeed. That's when it hit me. They gave him the company not because he earned it, but because of who he married. No qualifications. No proof he could run it. Just blind favoritism. As she was leaving, Daphne turned to me and said, "You'll regret not helping family." I told her the only thing I regret is wasting so many years trying to earn respect from a family that never valued me to begin with. So now, I'm focused on my own business. More former employees from my family's company are reaching out every week, asking if I've got openings. I've hired a few I trust, and they fit right in. As for my parents and their golden boy, they made their choice. And now? They'll have to live with the consequences. From what I'm hearing, this train wreck has only just begun. Everything has completely fallen apart at my family's business. And what's come to light in the past few weeks? Honestly, it's worse than even I imagined. You remember Mark, my cousin, the one who's been feeding me updates from inside? He called me last month, his voice tight, almost panicked. He said, "You're not going to believe what I just found." Turns out, Ethan wasn't just incompetent. He wasn't just making bad decisions. He was actively hiding the wreckage he'd caused. Mark stumbled onto it while helping the accounts department prepare vendor payment reports. He noticed something odd, huge discrepancies between the numbers Ethan was showing my dad and the actual financial statements. The dam finally broke when 3 of our biggest suppliers cut ties, refused to deliver another shipment until unpaid bills were cleared. That's when my dad, finally alarmed, demanded to see the full financials. Ethan had been too busy to share for months. What they found nearly destroyed him. The business had lost 70% of its value. 70. In just 6 months under Ethan's so-called leadership. And as if that wasn't catastrophic enough, the truth about the loans came out. Ethan had tricked my dad into signing papers he thought were routine documents, when in reality, they were massive loan agreements, stacking debt against every asset the company owned. And what did Ethan do with all that borrowed money? Did he reinvest? Upgrade equipment? Secure contracts? No. He gambled it away. Dumped it into the stock market. Day trading. Chasing quick profits to cover his growing mess. When confronted, he didn't even deny it. He claimed he was trying to multiply the company's wealth faster. Called manufacturing too slow. Said he could recover everything with just one good trade. The sheer delusion, it was unbelievable. And Daphne? My sister, his biggest cheerleader? Her reaction was somehow even worse. Instead of owning up to the colossal mistakes she and my parents had made, she started spinning excuses. Told relatives it was my fault. That if I hadn't left to start my own company, Ethan wouldn't have felt so pressured. That my competition forced him into risky decisions. Hearing that almost made me laugh. The mental gymnastics required to blame me for his gambling losses? It's absurd. But my dad wasn't laughing. The stress hit him hard. Too hard. He had a minor heart attack after learning the full extent of the hidden loans and reckless trading. He's recovering now, thank God, but the doctors told him to avoid stress. And how do you avoid stress when your life's work is going up in flames? My parents are now staring bankruptcy in the face. The company my grandfather started, the company my father poured his life into, the company I modernized and grew, is on the verge of being sold just to cover Ethan's debts. Employees, people I grew up seeing at the factory, people who watched me run around as a kid, are being laid off in waves. And more cuts are coming. Then, last week, my mom finally broke down and called me. For the first time in my entire life, she didn't defend Daphne. She didn't defend Ethan. She just sobbed and asked me, how did it all go so wrong? I wanted to scream the answer, because you chose an unqualified man over your own son. Because you valued a marriage certificate more than hard-earned experience. But I didn't. I let her cry. Because at this point, she finally sees it. But it's far too late. To make matters worse, former clients have been reaching out to my parents, furious. They discovered Ethan had been offering outrageous discounts, promising products we didn't even manufacture, just to stop them from leaving for my company. He thought he could figure it out later. Of course, he never did. The fallout has been brutal. The few managers left are fleeing. Ethan's friends, the unqualified replacements he brought in, they're already gone, abandoning projects halfway, leaving staff confused and factories in chaos. Production has cratered to less than 30% capacity. Clients are threatening lawsuits. And now, I'm hearing whispers that my parents are preparing to sell what's left before the collapse is complete. Part of me aches. This was supposed to be my legacy, too. My family's name, erased from an industry we once dominated. But another part of me knows this was inevitable. The moment they handed it over to a man who had no idea what he was doing, worse, a man who didn't even care, that's the moment it was doomed. And now? They're watching their empire crumble. I didn't think I'd be writing another update. Honestly, I thought the story had already ended. But yesterday, my parents showed up at my office. And what happened feels like the final chapter in this entire mess. It was near closing time. I was wrapping up emails when the receptionist buzzed me to say my parents were in the lobby. At first, I almost didn't believe it. When they walked in, I barely recognized them. My dad, the man who had always been sharp, proud, immaculately put together, looked broken. His shirt was wrinkled, his shoulders slumped. And my mom, who never let a gray hair show in her life, now had streaks of silver running through her hair. They looked like they'd aged 10 years in just a few months. And for the first time in my entire life, they came to apologize. They admitted they had been wrong. Foolish, even. Said they should never have trusted Ethan just because Daphne painted him as some business genius. My dad's voice cracked as he described what was left of the company, barely 30 employees where there used to be over 200. Loans in default. Vendors blacklisting them. Their reputation, our family name, dragged through the mud until it was unrecognizable. And then, they dropped the bombshell. Ethan was gone. Last week, when creditors started circling and lawsuits piled up, he didn't stay to face it. He left a note for Daphne saying he was sorry, that he couldn't handle the pressure anymore. He drained their savings, and vanished. And yet, my sister still defends him. She's living with our parents now, insisting he must have had some kind of breakdown. She swears he'll be back once the dust settles. But we all know the truth, he's not coming back. That's when my parents told me why they came. They begged me to buy the company. To merge it with mine. Said they couldn't stand the thought of strangers owning what my grandfather built, what my father dedicated his life to. My mom, who never, ever humbled herself, actually dropped to her knees in my office, begging me to save what was left. I asked about the debts. About the lawsuits. About the fraud charges from clients who'd paid in advance for orders Ethan knew he'd never fulfill. The truth spilled out, worse than I imagined. Banks moving to seize assets. Vendors suing. Equipment left to rot. I sat there and listened. And when they finished, I told them I'd think about it. But inside, I already knew my answer. No. Because the truth is, that company is beyond saving. The debts alone outweigh whatever scraps are left. The equipment is outdated, the reputation destroyed. Merging it with my own would be suicide, like tying a concrete block to my business and jumping into the ocean. But more than that, I've built something of my own. From nothing. My company is thriving, expanding into new states, run by people I trust with my life. I won't burn it all down just because my parents finally realized their mistake. As they walked out, my mom turned back one last time. She said, "Blood is thicker than water." I looked her in the eyes and said, "I was your blood too. But that didn't matter when you chose Ethan over me." And with that, it was over. They can sell what's left of the company to whoever is willing to take it. Because I'm done. I've learned the hard way that sometimes the only way to save yourself is to walk away from toxic family loyalty and carve your own path. It might sound cold, but here's the truth. I'm happier now than I ever was working under their roof. Happier building my own future instead of chasing their approval. This is the last update I'll share. And if there's anything I hope people take from my story, it's this: sometimes love, loyalty, and family pride aren't enough. Sometimes you have to choose yourself. And I did.